So, as you know, I'm a geek and I like to tinker with gadgets and stuff, and I received this in the mail. This little guy is actually a single board server. This is the Zima board. It's been out for a while. I finally got my hands on it because I wanted to try some things that I hadn't seen done before, specifically around crypto mining and AI. This is not a sponsored video. Nobody paid me to talk about anything I'm going to talk about today. Zima board did send me this board to review at no cost to me. So just putting that out there, full transparency. Again, not a sponsored or like promotional video, but let's see how this guy does. Boy, that product showcase thing really sucks. So there's a lot of videos out there like this that kind of go over the Zima board. I will leave timestamps down below in the timeline. If you want to jump ahead to any parts, go for it. So what is this guy? It kind of reminds me of a beefed up Raspberry Pi. I mean, it's a single board, built-in RAM that's not adjustable, like you can't increase it or remove it or change it anyway. Same with the processor, of course, and there's onboard storage on this. So the Zima board, there's actually three models. There's the 232, the 432, and the 832. That's what I got, was the 832 model. All of them have an Intel processor in it. So the Raspberry Pi is ARM-based architecture, so not x86. You're kind of limited on stuff you can do there. You can emulate a lot of things that you can do on this or a traditional computer. This, though, you can install Windows directly on it, or, you know, server OS, of course, Linux. We've got a quad-core Intel processor, 1.5 gigahertz, so it's up to 2.2 burst. N3450. The Zima 432 board has the same processor, but the entry-level one, the 232, only has a dual-core proc, the N3350 processor. They all have Intel Graphics 500 HD on board. This one has 8 gigs RAM in it, but the lower models have 4 gig and 2 gig respectively. They all come with 32 gigs of onboard storage, have a TDP of 6 watts. Yeah, this is a power saver for sure. Mine also did include this SATA adapting cable, SATA adapter, which kind of brings me to the board itself. Let's look at it a little bit closer. So on the front, we've got a power port here. Let's see if we can get this to focus. So we've got a power port, which is just the barrel connector, 2 USB 3s, and 2 1 gig Ethernet jacks, and then a mini display port. We've got a PCIe Gen 2 X4 slot here. And then on the back, we've got 2 SATA ports and a SATA power delivery port. And then nothing on this side. The bottom's clean, the top's got a heatsink. That's the board. They do make another adapter that's got, it's like a daisy chain or a breakout cable where you've got one cable that plugs into power delivery in the middle, and then 2 SATA data delivery ports to 2 of these adapters, so you can, hook up multiple drives at once, all through power being delivered on the device. Kind of cool. Something that doesn't come in the box that you will have to get separate if you don't have one is an adapter if your display doesn't have a mini display port input for video inputs. So this is supposedly able to deliver 4K at 60 Hertz. So out of the box, Debian is actually installed on the onboard storage, the 32 gig internal SSD. Internally in this, there's an operating system called CasaOS. And let me back up a little bit. CasaOS is what they call an operating system that comes pre-installed on the board. But it's not really an operating system because it's running on Debian. So Debian is the underlying OS. CasaOS is kind of just a management tool for different Docker containerized applications. In fact, let's plug this in and get into it and play with it direct. Boop. Well, let's see what the problem is here. I think I got the boot order mixed up. What? Did I fuck it up? I didn't fuck it up, did I? I might have. I might have fucked it up. Might have already broke it. There we go. Okay. As you can see, I mean, I'm in the BIOS of this thing, and it's just like, pretty much any other... Oh, well, let's try this. Changes, and... Yeah, there we go. See? Booted right up, no problem. Never doubted myself for a second. You can see it's running Debian 11 as the underlying operating system by default that comes already loaded on flash drive here. And it froze. I'm just kidding. Here we are. Oh, let me go get a Ethernet cable.
Eventually.
Boy, I sure came prepared. So this is the Zima board desktop by default. Most of the Linux desktop distributions that I've dealt with so far are all pretty much about the same. Got an Ethernet plugged into it. You can see that fire up Firefox, go to Google, and do all the internet things. Now, Debian's not too impressive. A lot of things can run that. CasaOS is not really an operating system. Like I mentioned before, it's more of a management dashboard for containerized applications that run on the board. When you first get this, you'll want to set it up however you want to set it up. Really go in and customize this splash screen or this dashboard. Let me start off by saying I'm not an expert at this app. Just kind of played with it a little bit, and this is my experience so far. So kind of take whatever I'm saying with a grain of salt, and if you know better, please let me know. So it's got an app store where I'm getting an error loading the app store list. Okay, well, fucking shit. There it goes. That was strange. So here is where you can get some of the most commonly used applications to use on this type of board. Because it has that PCI Express slot on it, you can do a lot more things with it. For example, something like a quad port or even a dual port NIC card to expand your network interfaces. If you want to make this into a router, you absolutely can. Using something like Pi-hole, you can set up this as a DNS server. Jellyfin puts you in control of your media, allows you to kind of use it like a Plex server, but without having to pay for Plex. Nextcloud is like a document repository, so if you want to use it that way. Unify Controller, native application, you can use this as Unify Controller if you don't have VM or a cloud key to use in its place. We've got a wide array here. Ooh, Grafana. A Home Assistant, that's pretty sweet and might actually be the go-to that I end up using this for. You've got a 2FA server that you can authenticate against, but you can even use this as a SAN or a NAS where all your files and stuff are stored on it. I do wonder if something like this would work, where it's a multi-SATA RAID card. Again, you can kind of use this as like the brains for a whole lot of things, similar to a Raspberry Pi or an Orange Pi, but again, it's x86 architecture, so it's running on an Intel chip, and it has that PCI slot. So that's CasaOS, runs on Debian. You can do all that stuff natively. Great. What else does it do? Now I'm going to plug this SSD in that I have preloaded with Windows 10, just to kind of show it can be done. If you want to run this as a daily driver for like a Windows OS, I would advise against it. Yeah, change the boot order again. Not a big deal. If you're going to jump between different apps or different operating systems that are loaded different ways, just so you know, you can do that. That popped up really quick, actually. Going in to install Windows, if you do plan on doing this, make sure you just use its own, like the Windows Install Media tool, because the ISO didn't recognize that I had an external SATA drive plugged in when I was trying to do this just on the fly. It kept trying to install on the onboard media, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to leave that intact. So heads up there, kind of a pain to install, but here we go. We're running Windows 10 on a Zima board. Because I have this plugged into the internet right now, it's probably trying to download things in the background and do what Windows does, because, you know, that's what Windows does. So it's pegging that CPU, like 100% utilization. Look at that. Internet's going crazy. A lot of disk usage because, like I said, it's probably trying to download some shit in the background. Probably updates. I just wanted to show you that, yeah, you can run Windows on this little machine. I'm going to turn it the fuck off now. That's not what I want to do. That's not the point of this. Let me go ahead and make this statement that this little thing, because you can run Windows natively on this, you could install Windows Server OS, like 2019 or 2022, essentially have yourself a little domain controller. It can run Active Directory, no problem. If you want to authenticate users, if you want it to run DNS and DHCP, it can do that. And you'd have to license it accordingly. It's kind of overkill to license a quad-core single-board processor with 16 cores of server licensing because Microsoft. Maybe in a pinch, or maybe for like a high availability or failover. Let's examine that word a little bit further. Server. When I think of server, I think of redundancy and I think of enterprise class. This is not enterprise class. This does not have redundancy built in. And I don't think that's who this is like geared towards. What else can it do? But will it mine crypto? Bet your sweet fucking ass it will.
Boy, it's creepy as hell in this data center without the lights on. What was that? Oh, that's better. So really, here we are. The Zima board right here, buddy. What we're gonna do is we're gonna plug this in, give it a little bit of Ethernet, and plug a RTX 3070 Ti into this bad boy, which actually needs powered by this external power supply. So I have HiveOS, which, if you don't know, HiveOS is a crypto mining management platform. Really is made for more than one machine and one card so that you can manage a farm or a fleet full of equipment from a single dashboard, so to speak. I've got a rig that's all set up, ready to go on a flash drive that's already set up to my primary account just for proof of concept to show you that this works. But now I gotta find the flash drive. So I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna plug this in and get this running. Now it's funny, some of the issues that I ran into powering the card, obviously you need an external power supply, but even on a card that doesn't require an external power supply, something like an NVIDIA RTX A2000, just 6 gigs, simple little card, doesn't have any external power required. All the power is pulled off the PCI board. This, I don't think, gives enough output to keep it mining or to get it mining. So I couldn't get it. I could get it to show up. I could get it to, you know, air quotes, qualifying in the portal, in the dashboard in Hive, but that's as far as I got. I couldn't get it to do anything else. Okay, couldn't find the other flash drive, so I just made a new one. Now, before I go any further, the next step I need to do, really, make sure that the port that I have my Ethernet cable plugged into is set up on the correct VLAN so that I have ports open and things like that. So let's go do that real quick.
Go ahead and get our software-defined network controller. Go to, yep, that's the site. Go into devices. See, we're plugging that into 22. So we go to port 22 and we can see that we've already got compute as our profile. So we are good to go ahead and go turn that on. Let's go do that.
Really, the next thing that we want to do is make sure our GPU is plugged into our power source. And if you're a crypto miner, you know this process pretty darn well. You can probably skip ahead. One thing I'd like to show here that I would have done differently with this board. See how the video output, onboard video output, is on this side next to where this is. So any card you put in here, whether it's a GPU or a network card, maybe a storage controller, by default these typically have this kind of front bezel on it and covers up your display output there. I would have put that right over here on top of the power output. That's just me. We'll go ahead and power on our video card and then power on our server board. And now we can go ahead to our mining screen, see what kind of hash rates we get, if any.
So now we can go from our SDN controller over to our HiveOS dashboard. And it's going to take a little bit. I wonder if it's stuck somewhere. Anyway, we'll let this do its thing and we'll be right back.
The next day.
Oh, here we are the next morning. You know what? When, in general, you're working on something and you can't get past it, sometimes it's best to just back up, pick it up the next day, or a little bit later, look at it from a different angle. So that's what I did. Basically, the boot order caused me to not be able to boot immediately into Hive, but here we are. Yeah, it's up and mining using HiveOS on the Zima board with a 3070 Ti. Like right here, look at that. Zima board 832 by Ice Whale. It's got a quad-core Celeron processor, so technically we could use this is for CPU mining as well. Efficiency probably isn't there. I don't know. It's only like 6 watts when it's just the board. So it works. I mean, kind of pointless to do it in my opinion. There's better ways to mine and use that horsepower to do that. This is not what it was made for, but it can do it. That's pretty cool. So what else can it do?
Excuse the background noise here. Super easy way to get this swapped out and running on Vast AI. This is something interesting I wanted to show. So I just unplugged it, right? It's still running. So power from the power supply, which is going into the GPU, which is then transferring power through the PCI ports into the board itself, keeping it on and powered. This is not power over Ethernet, but it's still working, still communicating. Fans are still running, all that. That's kind of cool. This is kind of the important piece that puts it all together. Broke it already. Jeez. Can't take me anywhere, I swear. So I've already got this loaded up with Vast AI. Let's go back over to the desktop and log into the console and see if this registers on the Vast dashboard.
So again, an issue with the boot order. Imagine that. Got it up and going though. So I installed Ubuntu on local SSD that we plugged in using the adapter, and here we are. I've got some of this blocked out because it shows my IP address, but we can see right here, Zima board 832. It does have PCIe 2, but it's running the 3070 Ti. But you can see it works. We've got it up and available on Vast. I'm not going to put a price and list it and keep it up there because I don't feel like it's actually going to get rented, but it totally could. Maybe in a future video we'll put it up for, I don't know, a couple of weeks and see what happens. Or what else can it do? You know, realistically, there's many things you can do with this tiny little single board. So far, I've only run into a couple of gotchas that have popped up. For example, I've got this. Boy, that took a long time to register. This is a PCI to M.2 adapter. I got this to register on the board itself, like it saw that it was an additional storage device, but I couldn't get it to load anything on it. Maybe it's because of the drive, I don't know. I didn't really investigate too much, but that's one of the gotchas that popped up. They do have a new model that's a Zima Blade. It has interchangeable RAM or expandable RAM, so you can take out the RAM that comes with it, add some additional memory to it. Let me know, what are your thoughts on this Zima board? Pretty cool little gadget. Is it really a server? I don't know. When I think of server, like I mentioned before, I think of redundancy. I think of enterprise class. I think of longevity. When I'm gonna buy a server and stick it in the closet, I'm gonna get 5, 7, 10 years out of it. Again, depending on what you're gonna use it for, but a lot of enterprises just use it for Active Directory or domain controller for user identity management, things like that. This can do file server or blended file server, like a hybrid server where some files are stored locally or roaming profiles are stored locally and the rest of the data is up in the cloud or another data center, things like that. This can do, if that's all it's gonna do. You know, applications, print server. This could be an excellent print server. Kind of expensive for a print server if that's all it's going to be used for. And then apps. Yeah, depending on the apps. Like, to be honest, I think my next project with this is going to be Home Assistant. A big benefit with this, and I've noticed this a lot recently, moving to enterprise equipment from consumer equipment. For example, my Proxmox server, mini ITX desktop, tiny little desktop with a Ryzen CPU and a whole bunch of RAM, and it worked really well for what it was doing. It only pulled like 130 watts. I moved that over to an enterprise grade server that's in my server rack, and it's pulling about twice that. 300, almost 400 watts, just at idle, doing what it normally would do. Same thing with this. So this only pulls 6 watts on the board itself before you start adding things to it. Let me know what you think. What type of video would you like to see next? What would you like to see me do with this next? Like I said, I'm gonna play with home automation, like Home Assistant, IoT devices, using this as the central hub. I'd also like to maybe put, pfSense, OpenSense onto it as well and kind of play with it as a router. maybe make our own NAS out of it with something like Jellyfin or OwnCloud. Maybe I could put Octoprint on it and set this up on multiple printers. What you think? Leave a comment down below. If you made it this far in the video and you learned something today, hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it. If this is the kind of content and videos that you enjoy seeing, consider subscribing to the channel for more like it. And of course, thanks for watching.